The Galactic Celebration Network features human surprise proposals as peak romantic joy. Part 1 had studied happiness for 90 years. As a senior researcher at the Galactic Celebration Network, she thought she had seen every type of joy the universe could offer. The methane breathers created beautiful pressure waves when they were happy. The photosynthetics glowed in soft green bursts during their bonding ceremonies. The Hive Collective sang with 10,000 voices when they welcomed new members. Each species had their own way of showing happiness and had documented them all. Her crystalline body flickered with curiosity as she reviewed the morning's flagged files. The automated systems had marked one recording as unusual. It came from Earth Station Harmony, a small human outpost near the edge of Council space. The file notes said the emotional readings were so strange that 3 different sensors had classified them as a malfunction. Opened the file and watched. The recording showed a human outdoor space that humans called a backyard. About 60 humans stood in clusters, talking quietly. They wore what the database identified as formal clothing. Small human children ran between the adults, and 2 Earth canines wandered around with their tongues hanging out. Everything seemed normal for a human social gathering. Then a ground vehicle arrived. 2 humans got out. The male was smiling in a way that the facial recognition software marked as nervous excitement. The female looked confused. She said something that the translator caught as, "I thought this was just dinner with your parents." The male human took her hand and led her toward the assembled group. That's when noticed something odd. Every single human in the gathering was staring at the couple. Small recording devices were raised. Everyone had gone completely silent. Even the canines had stopped moving. The female human stopped walking. Her confusion reading spiked. "Jake, what is this? Why is everyone here? Why is your entire family here? And my family? And Sarah? Sarah lives 6 hours away. She said she couldn't visit this month. Why is she?" The male human, apparently named Jake, was lowering himself onto one knee. This posture was significant. His database immediately pulled up the reference, a human courtship ritual of extreme importance. "Emma," the male said, and his voice was shaking. "I've been planning this for 4 months. Everyone here loves you. Everyone here knows what you mean to me. And I need them to see this moment because I want the whole world to know that I'm asking you to marry me." He pulled out a small box and opened it. Inside was a ring, a circular metal band with a crystalline stone. Human courtship traditions were complex, but understood this was a symbolic offer of permanent partnership. What happened next made watch the recording 3 more times. The female human's face changed in ways that contradicted every emotional reading understood. Her heart rate jumped to levels that indicated panic. Her breathing became rapid and shallow. Stress hormones flooded her system. Her eyes began leaking fluid, which in most species indicated pain or distress. She raised her hands to her face and made a loud vocalization that the sensors classified as a scream. But the chemical analysis told a different story. Oxytocin levels were rising. Dopamine was surging. Endorphins flooded her brain. Her facial muscles, despite the fluid leaking from her eyes, were arranged in what humans called a smile. The largest smile had ever seen in the human database. "Yes," the female human said. Then she said it again, and again. She said it 37 times while the male human stood up and placed the ring on her finger. She wrapped her arms around him and they held each other while all 60 humans in the gathering made loud vocalizations of approval. Several other humans were also leaking eye fluid. The canines began barking. The small human children jumped up and down. Everyone was recording it. Dozens of personal devices were capturing every angle of the moment. Later, discovered that the video had been transmitted to something called social media, where it had been viewed by 6 million other humans within 48 hours. Sat motionless in her research chamber for 20 minutes after watching the recording. Her crystalline structure pulsed with colors that indicated deep confusion. Nothing about this made sense. Why had the male human deceived his partner about the nature of the gathering? Why had so many other humans participated in this deception? Why did the female human show signs of both extreme stress and extreme happiness at the same time? And why did humans need so many witnesses for what was essentially a private partnership agreement? She brought the recording to her supervisor, coordinator, the looked at the footage with all four of her eyes, her sensory stalks twitching with interest. Fascinating, said. The deception is deliberate, the surprise is intentional, and yet the outcome is positive. More than positive, said. The emotional readings suggest this is one of the happiest moments in this human's entire life, but I don't understand why. We have records of human partnership bonds. They're usually simple legal proceedings. Why is this different? O was quiet for a moment. Then she said, find more examples. If this is a pattern rather than an anomaly, we need to understand it. The network's purpose is to document joy across the galaxy. If humans have discovered a form of happiness we haven't properly, that's significant. Over the next 3 weeks, became obsessed with human surprise proposals. She discovered that Earth's information networks were full of them. Thousands upon thousands of recordings, each showing a human asking their partner for a permanent bond in unexpected ways. She watched a proposal at something called a baseball game, where 50,000 humans were present. The male human had arranged for his question to appear on a massive display screen. The female human had covered her face with her hands while the entire stadium of strangers cheered. She watched a proposal where a female human had told her partner they were going to a routine medical appointment, but instead had gathered 200 friends and family members in a decorated hall. The partner had entered the building expecting a simple checkup and instead found everyone she loved waiting to witness the proposal. She watched a proposal where a male human had spent 6 months secretly learning to play a musical instrument, then performed a song he had written while his partner sat in a chair surrounded by floating lights. The partner had cried through the entire song. Each proposal was different, but they all shared common elements: deception leading to surprise, vulnerability displayed publicly, witnesses gathering to share the moment, recording devices capturing everything for repeated viewing, and always, the tears that somehow meant happiness instead of sadness. Brought her findings to the weekly council meeting. The logical collective's representative, a being of pure mathematical consciousness, was skeptical. This appears to be data corruption, they said. The emotional readings are contradictory. Stress and happiness cannot coexist at such extreme levels. The humans must be malfunctioning. But it disagreed. We need expert consultation. Contact the Human Liaison Office. We need a human to explain what we're seeing. 3 days later, met with a human cultural consultant who worked with the Galactic Council. She showed him the recordings she had collected. He watched them with a smile that grew wider with each video. Ah, he said, you've discovered our obsession with proposal videos. Yeah, we love these. Every human I know has watched dozens of them. But why? Asked. Her crystalline body flickered with confusion. Why do you deceive your partners? Why do you need witnesses? And why do these moments cause such extreme emotional responses? Leaned back in his chair. Okay, let me try to explain. First, the deception isn't really a lie. It's more like wrapping a gift. The surprise makes the moment more special. We know the answer is probably yes, or we wouldn't ask, but the surprise makes it magical. Magical had no reference for this concept in her database. Special, extraordinary, memorable, said. Humans live short lives compared to most species in the Council. We get maybe 80 or 90 years if we're lucky. So we try to create moments that stand out, moments we'll remember forever. A surprise proposal is one of those moments. And the witnesses asked. Smiled. We're social creatures. We need our joy to be seen and shared. When you propose in front of your family and friends, you're not just asking your partner to marry you. You're inviting everyone you love to be part of your happiness. You're making a public promise. And having it recorded means you can watch it again and again, especially years later when life gets hard. You can remember how much you loved each other in that perfect moment. But the emotional readings said, the stress responses alongside the happiness. How is that possible? It's the vulnerability, explained. When you propose, you're taking a risk. You're exposing your feelings in front of everyone. What if they say no? What if you've misjudged the relationship? That fear creates the stress response. But when they say yes, when your risk pays off, the relief and joy are overwhelming. It's the combination of fear and love and hope and relief all hitting you at once. That's why people cry happy tears. The emotions are too big for just smiling. Process this information. Slowly, something like understanding began to form in her consciousness. So humans deliberately create fear and uncertainty in order to make happiness feel stronger. Exactly, said. We don't just want to be happy. We want to feel deeply. We want moments that are big and scary and beautiful all at once. A surprise proposal is all of those things. It's terrifying and wonderful, and it only lasts a few minutes, but those minutes become a story you'll tell for the rest of your life. Thanked and returned to her research. She had hundreds more recordings to review, but now she watched them with new understanding. These weren't malfunctions or data corruptions. This was humanity's unique approach to joy, built from their short and their need for deep connection and their strange ability to turn vulnerability into beauty. She marked the proposal recordings for full analysis and documentation. The Galactic Celebration Network had been cataloging joy for 300 years, but it seemed they had missed something important about one of the galaxy's most emotional species. The humans, it turned out, had been hiding their most powerful form of happiness in plain sight all along. Part 2. The proposal archive grew rapidly. Within 2 months, had over 5,000 human surprise proposals. Each one was unique, yet they all shared that same quality of intentional vulnerability that had described. The more she watched, the more she began to understand the depth of what humans were doing. She found proposals that required months of planning. One human male had secretly contacted his partner's family members across 3 different planets, coordinating travel schedules and arranging accommodations, all while maintaining the fiction that they were taking a simple vacation together. When they arrived at the destination, a beach on Earth's coast, 50 family members emerged from their hiding places singing something called a love song. The partner had collapsed onto the sand, overwhelmed by the realization that this human she loved had orchestrated something so elaborate just to ask her a question he already knew the answer to. She found proposals that involved creative deception on impressive scales. A human female had spent 6 months convincing her partner that their planned bonding ceremony had been canceled due to permit issues with the venue. The partner had been genuinely disappointed, mourning the loss of what she thought would be a special day. Then, on what was supposed to be their canceled ceremony date, the first human had blindfolded her partner and driven her to a building. When the blindfold came off, she was standing in a fully decorated venue with 200 guests waiting in their seats. Everything had been planned all along. The ceremony was happening right now. The partner had screamed so loudly that security sensors had activated. Brought these new findings to the Council's quarterly review session. This time, the reaction was different. More species representatives wanted to see the recordings. They watched in fascination as humans performed elaborate theatrical productions just to ask a single question. The harmonic resonators, a species that communicated through musical vibrations, were particularly moved by a proposal where a human male had hired an entire orchestra. He had told his partner they were attending a concert. Instead, the orchestra performed a piece of music he had commissioned specifically for her, and in the middle of the performance, he walked onto the stage with a microphone. The resonators watched this recording 6 times, their harmonic frequencies shifting into patterns that indicated deep appreciation. The music is part of the emotional manipulation, one resonator observed. He uses sound to create vulnerability in her emotional state before asking his question. This is sophisticated psychological preparation. But the remained troubled. Their species had evolved in an environment where deception meant death, where accurate information was the only path to survival. The concept of lying to someone you loved, even temporarily and for positive reasons, violated their fundamental values. How can humans base their partnerships on falsehoods? A demanded. The foundation is corruption. How can that lead to stable bonds? Had anticipated this question. She pulled up long-term data on human partnerships that had begun with surprise proposals. The evidence suggests these bonds are actually more stable than average. Humans who experience surprise proposals report higher satisfaction with their partnerships even decades later. The deception is temporary and consensual in retrospect. Once revealed, it becomes a shared story that strengthens their connection. She showed them a recording of an elderly human couple being interviewed on their 50th bonding anniversary. The interviewer asked them about their proposal story. The male human, now wrinkled and moving slowly, described how he had convinced his partner they were going to a friend's party. Instead, he had rented an entire restaurant and filled it with everyone important to them. The female human, equally elderly, still cried when she talked about that moment 50 years ago. She said it was still the happiest surprise of her entire life. "See," she said in the recording, holding her partner's hand. "Even knowing what I know now, even after 50 years of marriage with all its difficulties, I still treasure that moment when I walked into that restaurant and realized what he had done. It wasn't about the deception. It was about the effort, the care, the fact that he loved me enough to create something magical." The representative watched this in silence. Finally, they said, "Perhaps deception is the wrong word. Perhaps this is closer to gift wrapping. The surprise is the packaging, not the content. The content is the question and the commitment. The packaging is just presentation." "Exactly," said. She was surprised by how defensive she felt about human proposals now. After months of research, she had come to appreciate their strange beauty. The council voted to expand the research budget. They wanted to understand this phenomenon more deeply. Was authorized to contact humans directly and request interviews. She was also given access to human social networks where people shared their proposal stories. That's when things became truly interesting. Discovered that humans didn't just watch proposal videos for entertainment. They studied them. Young humans who were planning their own proposals would watch hundreds of recordings, taking notes, looking for ideas. They wanted to create something unique, something their partner had never seen before, something that would stand out even among the thousands of proposals recorded every day. This led to an escalation effect. Proposals became more elaborate over time. Humans began competing, though they claimed it wasn't really competition. They just wanted their proposal to be special and personal and perfect. She found a proposal where a human male had learned to pilot a spacecraft just so he could take his partner on what he called a routine supply run to a nearby station. Except it wasn't routine. He had coordinated with the station's traffic control to position their ship in a specific location. Then he had his partner look out the viewport at a very specific time. 30 small satellites that he had secretly programmed over 6 months began to move into formation. They spelled out, "Will you marry me?" in letters large enough to read from space. The partner had stared out the window for a full minute before she understood what she was seeing. Then she had turned around to find him holding a ring, floating in zero gravity. The recording showed her trying to say yes while also trying not to laugh because they were both floating, and she kept drifting away from him. They had to grab onto wall handles to stabilize themselves for the kiss. It was awkward and perfect and completely human. Found another proposal where a human female had hacked her partner's augmented reality implants. For an entire day, every person her partner saw appeared to be holding a sign asking, "Will you marry me?" At first, the partner thought it was a strange advertisement campaign. Then she thought her implants were malfunctioning. By the time she realized what was actually happening, she had seen the question displayed by hundreds of strangers on the street, delivery workers, office colleagues, even children and pets. When she finally found her partner waiting at their home with an actual physical ring, she was laughing and crying at the same time. "You made the entire city propose to me," she said in the recording. "No," her partner replied. "I just made sure you couldn't miss the question when I finally asked it myself." But also found something else in her research, something that made the phenomenon even more complex and meaningful. She found proposals that had failed. The first one shocked her: a human male at a sporting event called a basketball game. Tens of thousands of humans in attendance. He had paid a significant amount of currency to have his proposal displayed on the massive screens throughout the arena. The screens showed his face, then showed his partner sitting beside him, then displayed his question in letters 3 meters tall. Everyone in the arena turned to watch. The attention of 20,000 strangers focused on one human female who clearly had not expected this moment. Her face showed panic. Real panic, not the happy kind had learned to recognize. She shook her head. She said something the audio couldn't capture over the noise of the crowd. Then she stood up and left. Just walked away, climbing over seats, disappearing into the exit tunnel while 20,000 humans watched in uncomfortable silence. The male human sat frozen for several seconds. Then the cameras mercifully cut away to something else, but not before capturing the complete devastation on his face. The relationship, discovered through follow-up research, had ended that night. She found more failed proposals. Not many compared to the successful ones, but enough to matter. A human who proposed too early in the relationship and received a gentle no. A human who proposed in a way that made their partner uncomfortable rather than happy. A human who had so badly misjudged their partner's feelings that the proposal revealed fundamental incompatibilities they had both been ignoring. These failures made understand something crucial. The surprise proposal wasn't just theater. It was genuinely risky. Every human who attempted one was gambling with their dignity, their relationship, and their emotional. They were making themselves vulnerable not just to their partner but to everyone watching. If it went wrong, the humiliation was public and permanent, recorded for millions to see. And yet they kept doing it. Thousands of humans every single day chose to take that risk. She brought this insight to her next meeting with, "I've found the failed proposals," she told him. "I've seen what happens when humans miscalculate. The emotional damage is severe. So why do they continue? Why take such a risk?" Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. Because the alternative is worse. Humans could propose in private safely with no witnesses and no risk of public embarrassment. But then the moment would be smaller, less meaningful. We take the risk because we believe love should be declared boldly. We believe that if you're going to promise forever to someone, you should be willing to do it in front of the world. "Even though you might fail?" asked. "Especially because we might fail," said. "The risk is part of what makes it meaningful. Easy things don't stay in your memory. Safe choices don't become the stories you tell your. Humans don't want safe. We want real. We want deep. We want moments that matter so much they're worth the risk of failure." Returned to her research with a new framework for understanding. She began to see the surprise proposal not as a simple courtship ritual, but as a profound statement about human values. In a universe where most species approached partnership through logic, compatibility algorithms, or biological imperatives, humans insisted on choice. Dramatic, vulnerable, witness choice. The Galactic Celebration Network's Human Proposal Archive had become the most accessed database in the entire Council system. Species who had never understood human culture were watching these videos. Some found them baffling. Some found them amusing. But many found them strangely moving, even if they couldn't fully articulate why. Had watched thousands of proposals now, but she kept returning to one in particular. It wasn't elaborate. There were no satellites or orchestras or massive displays, just two elderly humans in a park, standing near a pond where ducks were swimming. The male human had brought his partner there and told her he wanted to say something important. "We've been married for 43 years, he said in the recording. "We already did the legal stuff decades ago, but I never properly proposed. We just sort of decided to get married one day while doing dishes. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't special, and I've regretted that for 43 years. He lowered himself carefully onto one knee, his joints clearly causing him pain. From his pocket, he pulled out a ring. "So I'm asking you now, 43 years late, will you marry me, again, properly this time?" The female human had covered her mouth with her hands. Tears streamed down her face. "You old fool," she said, but her voice was full of love. "Yes, yes, of course yes. I'd marry you 100 times." They held each other by that pond while ducks paddled past, completely indifferent to the small human drama playing out on the shore. It was simple, it was quiet, and had come to understand, the most human thing she had ever seen. The willingness to be vulnerable, the choice to declare love publicly even when logic said it was unnecessary. The understanding that some moments deserved ceremony and attention and witnesses, even if you had to create those moments artificially. Humans, she realized, didn't just fall in love. They performed love. They celebrated it. They made it into art and theater and public declarations. They turned private feelings into shared experiences. And in doing so, they created something that the rest of the galaxy had somehow never quite achieved. They made love into a story worth telling. Part 3. The controversy started 3 months into research. A young crystalline named had attempted to surprise his bond partner with an unexpected resonance ceremony. Among crystallines, partnership bonds were formed through precise molecular resonance patterns. The process was beautiful but entirely predictable. Both partners knew exactly when and how the bonding would occur. Had tried to introduce uncertainty and surprise. He had told his partner they were attending a standard gathering. Instead, he had assembled their family clusters and attempted to initiate the bonding resonance unexpectedly. It had been a disaster. Crystallines broadcast their emotional states through their molecular structure. Deception was physically impossible for them. His partner had sensed his intentions hours before the planned surprise. Worse, the unexpected social pressure had disrupted their natural resonance patterns, causing a painful dissonance that took days to fade. The relationship had suffered significant damage. This attempt sparked fierce debate across the council. The Preservation Committee filed a formal complaint with the Galactic Celebration Network. They argued that human courtship practices were contaminating other species' cultural traditions. They demanded that the proposal archive be restricted or removed entirely. Humans are causing young beings across the galaxy to question their natural bonding processes, a Preservation Committee member declared at the Emergency Council session. This cultural contamination threatens the diversity we're supposed to be protecting. The logical collective agreed. Human surprise proposals are not universally applicable. They function only within human psychological and social frameworks. Attempting to replicate them in species with different evolutionary backgrounds leads to harm, as experience demonstrates. Sat in the council chamber, her crystalline structure pulsing with agitation. She understood their concerns, but something about the criticism felt wrong. She had spent 4 months now studying human proposals. She had interviewed dozens of humans. She had watched thousands of recordings. She had come to understand something about this phenomenon that the council seemed to be missing. When her turn to speak came, she stood before the assembled representatives. "I understand the concern about experience," she began, "but I believe we're drawing the wrong conclusion. The problem wasn't that he tried something new. The problem was that he tried to force a human practice into a crystalline framework. Those aren't the same thing." She pulled up her data displays. Let me show you what human surprise proposals actually represent. On the surface, yes, they're about surprise and deception and public displays, but those are just the methods. The underlying principle is something different, something deeper. She showed them a compilation she had prepared. Dozens of proposals, edited to show not the moments of surprise but the moments that came after, the embraces, the tears, the laughter, the way witnesses gathered around the couple, sharing in their joy, the way humans kept watching the recordings years later, remembering. Humans live short lives, said, 80 or 90 years at most. They lack telepathy, so they can't directly share their feelings with others. They lack the biological certainty that many species have about partnership compatibility. They're essentially operating blind, choosing partners based on incomplete information and hoping it works out. She changed the display. So they've developed this practice, this ritual. It serves multiple purposes. First, it creates a memorable moment that marks the transition from uncertainty to commitment. Second, it involves their community, bringing witnesses who will help hold the partnership accountable. Third, it demonstrates effort and intentionality. The surprise element proves that one partner cared enough to plan something significant. And fourth, it creates a story. A story, the logical collective representative asked. Why is narrative important to a partnership bond? Because humans need stories, said. When times are difficult, when partnerships face challenges, humans revisit their proposal story. They watch the recording. They remember how much they loved each other in that moment. The story becomes a touchstone, a reminder of why they chose each other. It's not just entertainment. It's a psychological tool for maintaining long-term commitment. She paused, gathering her thoughts. This next part was important. The surprise proposal isn't about the surprise. It's about demonstrating that you know your partner well enough to create a moment they'll treasure. It's about being willing to be vulnerable in public. It's about making your private feelings into a public commitment. These principles could theoretically apply to any species, but the methods would need to be adapted to each species' unique capabilities and values. The harmonic resonators seemed to understand. So's mistake was trying to use human methods rather than human principles. Exactly, said. A crystalline surprise proposal would need to work within crystalline limitations. Maybe it's not about hiding intentions, which is impossible for them, but about creating an unexpected harmonic pattern, or gathering more witnesses than expected, or choosing a location with special significance. The surprise doesn't have to be deceptive. It just has to be meaningful. But they weren't convinced. You're romanticizing a fundamentally illogical practice. Humans take unnecessary risks for theatrical display. This isn't wisdom, it's instability. Felt something like frustration building in her crystalline matrix. She pulled up another recording. Then explain this, she said. The video showed an emergency medical center on a human colony station. A human male had been in a serious accident, a malfunction with his environmental suit during external repairs. He had survived but was badly injured, lying in a medical bed with various machines monitoring his condition. His partner sat beside him, holding his hand. The injured human was trying to talk, his voice weak but determined. I had a plan, he said. I was going to take you to that restaurant you love, the one with the earth food. I had a whole speech prepared. I was going to be smooth and romantic. His partner was crying, telling him to rest to save his strength, but he continued. Can't wait anymore, he said. Thought I was going to die out there. Realized I've been an idiot waiting for the perfect moment. There is no perfect moment, there's just us, right now. He tried to reach into his jacket pocket but couldn't manage it with his injuries. His partner had to help him. Inside was a small box with a ring. This is the worst proposal in history, he said, and somehow he was smiling despite the pain. I'm in a hospital bed. I probably smell terrible. There's no music or flowers or anything romantic, but I love you and I'm asking anyway. Will you marry me? His partner had laughed and cried at the same time. "You idiot," she said. "Yes, obviously yes, but we're going to pretend you proposed at that restaurant later because this is ridiculous." "Deal," he said, and then he had to rest because talking was exhausting him. But they held hands, and the monitors showed his vital signs stabilizing, and his partner sat beside him wearing a ring that he had been carrying for months, waiting for the perfect moment that almost never came. Let the recording end. That proposal had no planning, no surprise, no witnesses except medical staff, no theatrical production, and yet it exemplifies everything that matters about human proposals: the willingness to be vulnerable at your worst moment, the choice to prioritize commitment over perfection, the understanding that love matters more than presentation. She looked around at the council members. Humans don't do surprise proposals because they're illogical. They do them because they're deeply aware of their own mortality and the fragility of their connections. Every proposal, successful or failed, theatrical or simple, is a human saying, "I choose you, and I want everyone to know I choose you, and I'm willing to risk embarrassment and rejection to make that choice public." That's not instability. That's courage. The council chamber was quiet. Finally, Coordinator A spoke. "What are you proposing, researcher?" "I propose that the Human Surprise Proposal Archive remain accessible, but with proper context. Educational materials that explain the underlying principles and warn against direct copying of human methods. And I propose that we classify this phenomenon not as a courtship ritual but as something new, an example of extreme emotional courage in the face of mortality and uncertainty." "That's quite a classification," I said, but she sounded intrigued rather than critical. "Humans are outliers in the galaxy," said. "They have unusually short, limited sensory capabilities, no telepathy, and relatively fragile bodies. By all logical assessment, they should be cautious and conservative with their partnerships. Instead, they've developed a practice that's bold to the point of recklessness. They gamble with their dignity because they believe some things are worth the risk. That's remarkable. That's worthy of study and respect, even if it's not suitable for direct imitation." The council debated for 3 hours. In the end, they voted in favor. The archive would remain open with enhanced educational context. A new category would be added to the Galactic Celebration Network's database: human emotional courage. But something else happened that hadn't anticipated. Species across the galaxy began submitting their own versions of meaningful partnership moments, not copying human proposals, but inspired by the principle behind them, creating their own traditions for demonstrating commitment and vulnerability. A group of photosynthetics developed a ritual where bonding partners would grow a plant together from seed, nurturing it through an entire season before declaring their intention to bond. The growth of the plant symbolized the growth of their relationship, witnessed by their community. The harmonic resonators created a new form of bonding music that incorporated intentional dissonance before resolving into harmony. The brief discord represented the courage required to join two separate lives into one harmonious whole. Even the logical collective surprised everyone by developing a mathematical proof that partners would solve together as a bonding ritual. The proof was deliberately difficult, requiring both partners to contribute unique insights. Completing it together demonstrated compatibility and mutual respect for each other's intellectual contributions. Humans loved this development. When heard about it, he laughed with genuine delight. "We accidentally started a galaxy-wide trend of more meaningful proposals," he said. "That's the most human thing ever. We share our weird traditions, and somehow everyone makes them better by adapting them to their own needs." Research became the foundation for a new field of study: comparative courtship courage. Young researchers from dozens of species began analyzing how different cultures demonstrated commitment and vulnerability. The human surprise proposal remained the most dramatic and theatrical example, but it was now recognized as one expression of a universal principle: the idea that choosing a partner deserved intention, effort, and witness. 6 months after the council debate, attended a celebration on Earth, had invited her to his daughter's wedding. She watched as young humans gathered to witness two people promise forever to each other. The ceremony was full of rituals that now understood: the walking down an aisle between rows of witnesses, the exchange of rings, the public vows, the kiss that the gathered humans cheered for. But the moment that struck her most deeply came during the reception. An elderly human couple was dancing slowly to music, recognized them from her research. They had celebrated their 60th bonding anniversary recently. Someone had asked them about their proposal story, and they had told it with obvious pleasure, the details polished smooth by 6 decades of retelling. "Do you still remember how you felt in that moment?" someone asked the female human. She smiled, still swaying to the music in her partner's arms. "Every day," she said. "When he's being stubborn or when I'm being difficult, when things are hard. I remember standing in that garden with all our friends watching, and him kneeling in the grass looking terrified and hopeful at the same time. I remember thinking that this man loved me enough to risk everything in front of everyone we knew. How could I not treasure that for the rest of my life?" Her partner kissed her,